if you were to power rank the Western Conference right now, like Oklahoma City is still obviously at the top. But like after that, you're looking at Denver, like we just said, has had a really good offseason. Houston has had a really good offseason. Dallas, I like that D'Angelo Russell signing. I know that like he's a pretty polarizing player, but like with Kyrie Irving out until like supposedly All-Star break, that is a really, really good pickup for them to, you know, kind of fill a similar score first, you know, playmaking point guard in that position in the meantime until Kyrie is back and healthy. So Dallas is a threat, obviously, with, you know, the Cooper Flag edition. And as long as AD can stay healthy, which is, you know, famous last words. And we talked about the Lakers, like where do you kind of, you know, to almost put you on the spot again, like, do you have a set order in your mind, or are you kind of just tearing it off as like, all right, it's still OKC's conference and then everybody else, or has there been any teams that, like, you know, has Denver done enough or has Houston done enough to, in your mind, kind of jump into that top tier with OKC?
I think that they're right. I think they're right there. I think that it's OKC. I think Denver and Houston are right there. I think, like, you know, we need to see it obviously, but I think that they're the 2-3 teams that like right there. Then, you know, LA, they still have Luka Doncic and LeBron James. They have a lot of questions, but one of the sure facts is they have those two guys. Minnesota hasn't really done anything per se, but at the same time, they're banking on, you know, a leap from, you know, Rob Dillingham. They kept their guys, you know, they lost in the kill, right? But they paid Julius Randle, they paid Naz Reid, and they're going to come back. They beat the Lakers last year. Anthony Edwards is going to get better next year as well. So I have them up there as well. Memphis is tough because I like the Ty Jerome sign. They bring in KCP. They draft Cedric Calder. I think is more of like a free agency addition than a draft pick. Just given his age, obviously still needs to learn the league. But then Jaren Jackson Jr. has the toe thing. Going to be reevaluated in 12 weeks. So gives me pause there. Clippers bring Brook Lopez in. I think that's good to have a backup big for Zubats as well. So it's just going to be rough in the Western Conference. But I have those teams kind of in that next tier because they're sorting things out. And Minnesota, I would put at the top of that tier. I'm sure there's a name of a team that I haven't said. Golden State's right there as well because they're a team who also hasn't really done anything, but Steph Curry's going to get healthy. That counts as doing something. So, you know, and the Spurs are a big wild card as well, right? Because Wemby, we haven't seen him play in a long time, but I fully expect that when he's back on the court, he's going to be probably a top 5 player next year in the league. Like, that's not unrealistic to say, and we'll see how quickly Dylan Harper pops and all of that stuff happens as well. So West is going to be crazy, man. It just kind of feels like more than anything, it's just like it's easier to pick out the teams who to write off right now, and that's like New Orleans until they prove otherwise, Phoenix until proven otherwise, Sacramento until proven otherwise. But everybody else, man, Utah, obviously, of course. But when you talk about that top half, man, it's going to be a battle. And we could see something similar to what we saw this past year where everything is jumbled up until like the last few days of the season.
Yeah, and like there's no reason that a team like San Antonio can't take a Houston like jump, right? Like that we saw from the Rockets this past year. Like if we had sat on this pod this time a year ago and I had said the Houston Rockets are going to finish as the number 2 seed in the Western Conference with as much of a gauntlet like the West was last year, you would have looked at me like I was crazy. You know what I mean? Like, but these young teams are starting to retool the right way, put the right pieces around their young players, bring some vets in, things like that. And now all of a sudden, it's not that crazy to say, you know, last year that Houston made that leap. It's not that crazy to say San Antonio could be a team that makes that leap. So I'm with you on that. The West is an absolute gauntlet. And then you look at the East, and it's just like, man, I mean, like with the Tatum injury and the Halliburton injury and Dame injury, and like who knows what the Bucks look like. And you know, the Knicks, like, yeah, obviously they're still going to be one of the top teams in the East, but then like we talk about the Magic, like being a team that take a step forward. And Cleveland is a team that is really, really good. They're not going anywhere, but they also always find a way to choke in the playoffs. And it's like, you know, Atlanta's getting better. Like there's, you know, I mean, Toronto, like what's Toronto going to look like? They have a pretty good looking starting 5, but beyond that, like, you know, is that a team that can jump into the play-in range again? So, you know, I feel like it is it's night and day. Like the East is going to be a pillow fight and the West is going to be a gauntlet. And there's really an opportunity there for some teams in the East to kind of step up like Atlanta is trying to do this offseason, clearly trying to maximize and capitalize on, you know, teams like Boston likely having a down year, Indiana likely having a down year. So, you know, Philly, no one knows what to make of Philly. Like is Philly, I was talking about this with a friend earlier, not to go on like a little bit of a tangent, but like Philly.
Go ahead. Let's hear it.
if you look at that roster, like they have a lot of guard depth, and like we don't know what's going to happen with Quentin Grimes yet, right? It feels like the writing, or at least Sixers reporters feel like the writing on the wall is letting Yabu walk to the Knicks means that they're trying to retain Quentin Grimes. But like you have Jared McCain, you have Tyrese Maxey, you have Quentin Grimes. You just drafted VJ Edgecombe. Paul George had a really bad year last year. He couldn't really stay healthy. No one knows what you're going to get. Yeah, bring back Eric Gordon, like bring back Kelly Oubre, like you don't know what you're going to get out of Joel Embiid. Like that is a team like. What prompted it was he was like, what do you think your floor and ceiling is for Philly? And like the floor is obviously exactly where they were last year, like out of the play-in tournament picture altogether because Embiid can't stay healthy, PG can't stay healthy, and the young guards aren't good enough yet to kind of carry them through those types of shortcomings. But like in next year's East, where things appear to be as wide open as they are, like could Philly somehow make a run to the NBA Finals? Like, yeah, they probably could. Am I going to bet on that or bank on it? Hell no, I will not do that. But like I'm saying, like it's not real. It's not unrealistic to say that they could. So that just again goes to show that like for all the different reasons, the East is as wide open as the net. I guess after the Thunder, the West appears to be next year, just because there's so much uncertainty around the conference.
Yeah, and a couple of those Sixers guards looking over their shoulder, they got Hunter Salas behind them as well. Another Deke signed a 2-way deal with the Sixers. Had to give him a big shout out. Before we wrap here, I know you mentioned it real quick. We can talk about some of these teams. First of all, I feel like I made the joke on here or not. Maybe I didn't, but somebody told me that, or we talked about how maybe it was you that made the joke actually, that they had the Champions Classic in college basketball. That kind of what the play-in tournament became for the Bulls and the Heat and the Hawks over recent years. They just alternate who plays who in different locations. It's just the play-in classic for those teams. But the Hawks have jumped out of that range, to your point that you were making. And the Raptors re-signed Garrett Temple, added Sandro Mamukelashvili from the Spurs. But they're going to be better because Brandon Ingram is going to be healthy. I feel like there's probably going to be a trade involving somebody at some point. They re-signed Jakob Poeltl got a well-deserved, well-earned payday. It's hard to find a starting caliber center in the league. I got to give a quick tip of the cap. The Hornets trade for Pat Connaughton, trade for Colin Sexton, sign Spencer Dinwiddie, bring back Mason Plumlee. I don't know if I'm going to tip the cap to that, but that being said, it is interesting just, where these teams are right now. It's going to actually be an intense pillow fight to see, one, who makes it to that 7 to 10 range, but also who wants to make it to that 7 to 10 range, because they got some dogs in next year's draft class. And it's a long time coming for that. But just thinking about that, like, when you're a team that has Scotty Barnes or a team that has LaMelo Ball, like at a certain point, you want to start winning. And I think that, there's a lot of questions about the construction of the Raptors roster. And there's a lot of credit going to the Hornets just trying to put together a team that works. So I'm just curious. I'm not curious. I'm just interested and excited to see these young up and coming teams, at least right now, try to make something and make these duds of seasons that are in the past a distant memory.
And like Washington is a team that also deserves some sort of like mention here, because we haven't. I'm looking at it now. Like we didn't bring up Brooklyn. Obviously, we kind of trashed them for like what they did in the draft last year. And like, what does Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. on the same team look like? Like I have absolutely no idea. Like that's like playing like my team at the rec center with two guys that just refuse to pass the ball, and you're kind of just like standing around. Like, does this guy's like pass button even work? Like that's what it's going to look like in Brooklyn next year. Like that's how all the rookies are going to feel. But like Washington deserves a mention in my mind, just because I really respected the way that they went about last year. Like they really from day one were like, we are going to roll out the young guys. We are going to start Bub Carrington. We're going to start Alex Sarr. We're going to start, Keyshawn George. Like they were really committed to playing their young guys. And now they've like brought in this contingent of vets. They have Chris Middleton. They have Marcus Smart. They have CJ McCollum. And it's like, that is the recipe to kind of like inch your way out of being like a perennial bottom of the league lottery team to, all right, maybe can we be a competitive playing team? Like, am I expecting the Wizards to make that jump? No, not necessarily, but also like that experience those young guys got last year is invaluable. And like, could they be a team that sneaks into the 10 seed? Like, I don't see why not. I don't see why they can't sneak in to the 10 spot, or why it's not as likely as that they sneak into the 10 spot as it is like Toronto or it is like Charlotte, like you just said. So, are they going to be bad? Probably, but it's just interesting for different reasons. Why this is going to be worth tuning into next year, because, there's enough bad teams to go around that like, hey, these days 10 teams have to make the playoffs or will play in. But you know what I'm saying? Like have to make the postseason. And, even though there's probably only 6 good teams in the East next year, 5 good teams in the East next year, like you got to fill out the other 4 or 5 spots. So those are up for grabs, and it's going to be interesting to see who claims it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm excited again. Like you said, we'll see what happens with the Raptors. They're right there in that. If you ask Kendrick Perkins, it's a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference. We'll wait and see how it plays out, because I do kind of feel like partly there's some type of deal. Like they have all their contracts, all their roster spots are already filled. So something could happen, something could change. And of course, we will be here to react to that. Thanks for checking out NBA Sound System Canada on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe below and find us wherever you get your podcasts. And on Instagram, we have weekly episodes and bonus content throughout the week.